What's happening? Happy Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. And Mike Vrabel is building a monster staff in New England for your Patriots. You know, one of the biggest reasons why I love the Mike Vrabel hire, and we talked about this when Gerard Mayo was hired last year. One of the biggest reasons why I loved the Mike Vrabel hire was because he knows how to build a program. He understands what it takes to build a program. That was the biggest issue with Ben Johnson. Now, it's not to say that Ben Johnson can't build a program. I actually like what he's doing. Dennis Allen as his DC makes a lot of sense. But Mike Vrabel, been there, done that, understands what you have to do to put a staff together. And we started to see that over the past couple of weeks in what he's doing with this program. He understands. He understands what it takes. And not only does he understand what it takes, he also has a vast network of people. Remember, Gerard Mayo did not have a network. He did not have many connections. So that left Elliott Wolf to scramble to try to find some kind of representative coaching staff. Vrabel, you don't have to worry about that. He's built a program. He's got tons and tons of network opportunities across not only the NFL, but also college football. He's been around the game for a long time. He knows a lot of people. And when you've been around for a long time and know a lot of people, conversations happen. When those conversations happen, you get to know other people. And I had high expectations for this staff because of that. Because I believe that Vrabel had everything he needed to put together a very good professional football staff. And here we are. And I'm telling you right now, I am very optimistic about this staff. They are building a monster. And Vrabel has at least met my expectations, if not exceeded my expectations. Let's look at offensive line coach, and let's think about what happened over the past couple of years. In 2022, you had Matt Patricia and company. Yuck. In 2023, you had Adrian Clem. Now, Adrian Clem had a physical health issue. I hope he's well, but the offensive line wasn't necessarily great. And it didn't feel like players loved playing for Clem or that Clem was somehow, some way above and beyond any other offensive line coach that we had seen the prior couple of years. So you went from Patricia to Clem. After Adrian Clem, you had Scott Peters. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Scott Peters is not a good coach. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he is a great coach, a terrible coach. Frankly, I don't know. I will tell you that Peters did not have the Jimmies and Joes up front to prove whether or not he was a great coach. He was quickly hired by Cincinnati. So apparently Cincinnati thinks he's going to be good. Cincinnati in the same division as Cleveland, where Peters came from. So Scott Peters might end up working out. But I will tell you this. Mike Vrabel bringing Doug Marrone into this program is a huge step forward. And a huge step forward in the right direction. Doug Marrone is incredibly experienced. This guy has been around the game for a long time, and he's very well respected. Aside from Marrone, the Patriots, according to Mike Reese, are also bringing in Jason Hufteling, easy for me to say, Jason Hufteling, who was the assistant offensive lines coach for Tennessee from 2021 to 2023. He was with the Chicago Bears last year. Obviously, the Bears' offensive line was trash. But Hufteling is somebody that Vrabel trusts, believes in. So Hufteling will come in. Sounds like he's going to work underneath Doug Marrone. But Doug Marrone is the key piece here. You know, we've been talking over the last week and a half or so, offensive line coach, wide receivers coach, two of the most important hires that Mike Vrabel / Josh McDaniels would have as they build this program. Doug Marrone is one of the best. He's been one of the best. Started coaching the offensive line in 1993. Doug Marrone's first year coaching the offensive line at Coast Guard back in 1993, Scott Peters, the last offensive line coach, he wasn't even allowed to drive when Doug Marrone had his first season as an offensive line coach. That tells you the level of experience. Doug Marrone's first year as an O-line coach, Scott Peters still could not drive a vehicle. Jordan Schultz, NFL insider, tweeted out that Doug Marrone is viewed across the league as one of the best coaches. Viewed as one of the best coaches of the offensive line in football. And that's who you just brought in. He was so respected as an offensive line coach that he actually had a shot, not once, but twice, to be a head coach in the NFL. Now, did not end up being a great head coach, even though Bill Belichick respected the heck out of Marrone. Bill O'Brien obviously respected Marrone. Marrone was at Boston College this past year. So he's been respected by some of the best, and he's very respected across the league. And he was so good at what he did with the offensive line that he got 2 shots at being a head coach. You don't see that very often. You don't see a ton of guys go from offensive line coach to head coach. You don't see it a ton. It's usually offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. You can sprinkle in some special teams coordinators, right? Like John Harbaugh in Baltimore. You don't usually see offensive line coach make that jump to head coach. But Marrone was so good at being the offensive line coach that he became a head coach twice in the league. I think that speaks volumes. This is somebody who has coached the offensive line in the NFL for at least 12 years. For a dozen years, he's been coaching the offensive line. Again, you want to talk about experience. You want to talk about somebody who is very respected throughout the game. You know, we talked about when Mike Vrabel was hired. The Patriots went from a very unserious program to a serious program in that moment. I said it then, I say it now. They became a serious franchise when Mike Vrabel was hired as the head coach. And this is part of the reason. Because Vrabel will go out and he will find other people who are well respected in the game, very experienced, has had high levels of success at coaching certain positions or being coordinators. He will bring those guys into the circle. And then you have a number of people on this staff that are highly respected, that have a resume of success, that help make this football program even more serious by the second. The Doug Marrone hire is a fantastic hire. I don't know how you could have gone and got somebody else who would be better or much better. It's tough to believe. It's tough to see who would walk in and you'd feel more confident in. Maybe Dante Scarnecchia, but my man's playing pickleball. He's done with the NFL. He doesn't want to coach. He's out. I'm gone. So you can't bring Dante back. Stoutland in Philadelphia is a fantastic offensive line coach. But if you were to sit back and poll a bunch of NFL coaches, I'm telling you right now, Marrone would be in that group of names. Guys that have done it over the last decade or two, Marrone would be right up there with some of the tippity-top offensive line coaches. So it's a fantastic hire. And Marrone, with his experience, should help both young players, Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, right? Those young guys. He should help those young guys, but he also should help some of the veteran offensive linemen because he's been around the game for so long. Because he's been around, because he's worked with so many people, this is a very, very good hire. And if you're a Patriots fan, I think you should be excited that Doug Marrone is the offensive line coach. And I know we're not going to sit here and break down offensive line play every single week. We've had to the last couple of years because it's been so bad looking at pressure rate and all of these numbers. But this is one of the best guys out there that you could get. And Mike Vrabel landed him. But the Patriots weren't done. They were not done with Doug Marrone. They brought somebody else in today, officially. We'll get to that in 1 minute. Before I get to that, help us out. Build this channel up. Build this community. Let's keep pushing the Nick Cattle Show, this YouTube channel. We can do it a couple of different ways. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to, spend a bunch of money or a bunch of your time. All you've got to do, you just see that thumbs up right there on the channel, right there on the page. All you got to do is click that thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up. More thumbs up means YouTube will push this through the algorithm. We will go through the algorithm world together. So don't forget to give us that like, click that thumbs up. That helps us. Don't forget to throw a comment in. How do you feel about Doug Marrone? Are you as excited about some of these hires that we've seen from Mike Vrabel as I have been? Because I am very excited by what I'm seeing with this staff. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by free agency. We got about a month and a half left. We are right around 5,650-ish, trying to get to 6,000. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, people, do not forget to help us out as well. Rate and review. Spotify numbers are jumping big, so don't forget to help us there as well. All right, before I get to the next hire, and I saw the Doug Marrone thing, and I was very happy with the Doug Marrone thing. Shout out to PatsPro_21 on Twitter, who actually sent me a note on Saturday that Marrone was going to be hired. Nobody else had it. Nobody else had it. And then like 48 hours later, we find out. So shout out to PatsPro_21, who is breaking stories this offseason, man. You got, Pasteris out of nowhere breaking stories on Twitter. PatsPro_21 breaking stories. Kirk Minahan breaking big stories with the Patriots. Out of nowhere, Twitter's going bananas with the Patriots news, beating all the insiders. So shout out to PatsPro_21, who's done a great job. But before I get to, hey, I was excited about Marrone, but then the next news that dropped made me even more excited. Before I get to that, Pete Pretorius throws in a super chat. If you want to jump to the front of the line, you can send a super chat. Thank you for the 5, Pete. Ceiling talk metaphor. I don't want a med student with a high ceiling doing heart surgery on my son. Give me an experienced heart surgeon. Pete's talking about my rant that I had on the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast last week about the ceiling. And I keep hearing people tell me that Ben Johnson had a higher ceiling than Mike Vrabel, and Nick Caley has a higher ceiling than Josh McDaniels as an OC. We don't know that. We have no idea that that's the truth. Ben Johnson, we haven't seen his ceiling as a head coach. Because it's an unknown, it's a better ceiling. It's a higher ceiling than Vrabel because he hasn't done the job before. That makes zero sense to me. And I keep asking people the question. Mike Vrabel got to an AFC championship game and lost to Patrick Mahomes. So are you telling me that he was unable to beat Patrick Mahomes the one shot he got at him in the AFC championship game, which means he can't get past the AFC championship game? He can't lead a team to a Super Bowl? What are we doing here? Josh McDaniels has been on multiple Super Bowl teams and has literally changed offenses during the season and still helped win a Super Bowl. How are you telling me about this ceiling stuff? It drives me bananas. Pats Pro, there he is. They're building a monster. Very exciting. There's the insider, the Nick Cattle Show insider. Pats Pro, you're going to be labeled. You are the Nick Cattle Show, this podcast's insider. Don't go crazy, though. Don't be giving me bad intel, Pats Pro. There's a lot of pressure on you now, but I appreciate you, man. You've been doing some great stuff. Charlie, $10 super chat. Thank you, Charlie, for the 10. Feeling good vibes heading into the offseason. Happy Monday. Yeah, I mean, so far from the Mike Vrabel hiring to today, I don't know how you can't be excited. Vrabel to me was the top get in this hiring cycle as a head coach. Josh McDaniels was precisely the guy I wanted as offensive coordinator. Then you look at some of these other hirings. Terrell Williams comes in with a boatload of experience. He's worked with Vrabel. He's a very respected guy. I don't know if he's going to be good, but I do know that he'll have Mike Vrabel helping him out on that side of the football, so I feel more confident about that. Retaining Jeremy Springer, I thought was the right move. You hired Doug Marrone to work on your offensive line. I think that's a fantastic move. I mean, I know I'm going to sound like a homer, but I couldn't care less. I'm just telling you how I feel. Did I sound like a homer when I was killing Gerard Mayo the final month of the season? No. Last year's coaching staff, I thought it made sense as far as the pieces they put together given the circumstances. But as I said throughout last offseason, I said it through the preseason, I said it through the early part of the season, I have no idea if these guys are going to work, right? I have no idea if Alex Van Pelt can be a good offensive coordinator. I have no idea if DeMarcus Covington can be that guy. With this staff right now, I know Josh McDaniels is a damn good offensive coordinator. I know Mike Vrabel is a pretty damn good coach as the head coach. I know Doug Marrone has this long track record of being one of the better offensive line coaches in football. I saw Jeremy Springer last year bring up a special teams unit that was near the bottom of the league and brought them up to near the top of the league. So I've seen it. I gave those guys last year the benefit of the doubt because, as I say, you need to prove to me that you can do a job or not do a job. Until then, you get the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to write you off. You might surprise me. Many people thought that I couldn't host a solo radio show down in Virginia Beach back in 2012 when I left Boston and went down to the 757. I proved those people wrong. Those people could have been right. Those people could have said, you have no chance hosting that show. You're going to fail. And I might have failed, and they would have been right. But I give people the benefit of the doubt. With this coaching staff, with this situation right now, so far the last couple of weeks, I don't have to give them the benefit of the doubt because I've seen them work these jobs before, and I've seen them be successful at the highest levels or close to the highest levels. So I don't know how you're not excited right now. If they do something that I disagree with, okay, we'll talk about it, and I'll smash them, just like I smashed Belichick towards the tail end of his tenure when he had to go. Just like I thought Gerard had to go after that Arizona game. Time to move on. Didn't work. So I think you should be excited. This is a time of excitement. Yes, they need to add talent. Yes, trust me when I tell you, friends. We will pour through free agency. We will get in depth. We will look at the free agents on this team. We'll look at the free agents out there through the NFL. We'll talk about Ryan Cowden and Vrabel and Elliott Wolf and what they end up coming up with as a plan. We'll talk about the draft. We'll go through some of the combine stuff. We'll get through all of that. And I agree with all of you. If you're sitting there going, yeah, great staff, but they need talent. We agree. They need talent. But you can take that talent and feel really good about developing that talent, improving that talent with a coaching staff that knows what it's doing. And that's what we have right now. This is a coaching staff that knows what it's doing. Thank you, Charlie, for the 10. Terry jumps in with a $20 super chat. Double Charlie super chat. Uh-oh. Now we have Terry coming in over the top of Charlie, dunking on him, tapping her head. Thank you for the 20, Terry. It is much appreciated. JB Brown with the $5 super chat. All that really remains of importance is wide receivers coach. Looks like a solid professional staff so far. Yes, the wide receivers coach. I'll give you some names. I'll give you some names a little bit later on. Guys that I'm looking at. And I would be very excited if they added one of these guys as the wide receivers coach. But you're right, JB. I mean, I think that's the final big piece of the puzzle is the wide receivers coach. I would love to know if Mike Pellegrino is going to be retained on this staff. I don't know his contractual situation. He obviously has a great relationship with Bill Belichick, but I would love if Pellegrino stays. If you told me that Pellegrino stays, Brian Belichick stays, and they add one of my guys on my wide receivers coach list, I couldn't be happier with the coaching staff. So thank you, JB, for the 5. All right, let's get back to business here. So Doug Marrone, that news, I felt good, right? It's like, man, that's a really good hire. That is a fantastic hire. But then we got the news that the Patriots are also adding Thomas Brown. And I was like, this is truly putting together a monster staff. Thomas Brown, according to reports, will be the tight ends coach. He will also be the passing game coordinator. I love it. I love it. I love Thomas Brown as the passing game coordinator and the tight ends coach. Couple of things I'll tell you about Thomas Brown and why I love the move, why I love the hire. Number one, this is somebody who can run his own offense. He has been near the top of the list as far as OC candidates the past couple of hiring cycles. We talked about him last year as a possible offensive coordinator. And, you know, he is somebody who was an offensive coordinator for Carolina before Frank Reich lost his mind. He let Thomas Brown call the offense for like 3 weeks. Then he got him out of there, and he wanted to take over the play calling. Guess what? Frank Reich didn't do a better job. He probably did a worse job. Then Brown, because Reich got fired, Brown had to find a job. Brown went to Chicago this past year. Now, people will say, well, the Chicago offense was bad. The offensive line was terrible. Caleb Williams wasn't as good as people thought he was going to be. Here's what I'll tell you about Thomas Brown. He wasn't the offensive coordinator. Shane Waldron was the OC. Shane Waldron failed terribly. He was fired early on in the season. Thomas Brown then took over the Chicago offense. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, when Thomas Brown was calling the offense, Caleb Williams actually looked much better than he did when Shane Waldron was the OC. You could look at respected people like Mina Kimes and Dan Orlovsky, other people looking at those few weeks when Thomas Brown was in charge of calling plays. The Chicago offense was much better with Caleb Williams, and he looked much more comfortable. And then Brown had to take over as the head coach because Matt Eberflus embarrassed himself and embarrassed the organization on Thanksgiving. Gobble, gobble. He didn't call a timeout. So because Eberflus failed to call a timeout, Thomas Brown ends up becoming the interim head coach. So when he was in Chicago last year, though, and he had the chance to work with that offense, the offense was better. Second thing I will say about Thomas Brown, he had 3 years under Sean McVay. And Sean McVay, the tight pants family, right? The tight pants crew, everybody loves Sean McVay. Sean McVay is one of the most respected head coaches in football. His coaching tree speaks for itself. Thomas Brown was not only on McVay's coaching staff, he was also an assistant head coach. That speaks volumes. I don't think Sean McVay gives the title of assistant head coach to an Hammenegger. I don't think McVay says, I'm just going to give this guy the assistant head coach title for the hell of it. If Sean McVay gives you the assistant head coach title, that tells me that Sean McVay thinks very highly of you. And if Sean McVay thinks very highly of you, I am very excited by you being hired by the New England Patriots. So Thomas Brown had one of the top jobs with the Rams under McVay. Now, what does that tell you? Here's another reason why I love the Thomas Brown hire. It's the second part of his title, right? Tight ends coach, fantastic, but pass game coordinator. So you're telling me you're taking Thomas Brown, who has studied under Frank Reich back in the day. He has been an understudy of Sean McVay, Sean McVay's assistant head coach. You're telling me that he's going to be the passing game coordinator. Do you know what that tells me? That is yet another sign that Josh McDaniels in this Patriots offense is not going to be the offense that people thought it would be. It's not going to go back to the Tom Brady days. This, I believe, is going to be an evolved offense with McDaniels. When you think about the hires that are happening here, when you think about the young offensive assistants, right? Ohio State, the Cleveland Browns. Now you've got Thomas Brown as the passing game coordinator who majored in Sean McVay's offense for 3 years. This is going to be a blending. This is going to be blending both, right? It's going to be Josh McDaniels and what he loves to do to go along with some of what McVay and Stefanski and some of that West Coast offense loves to do. So I think the fact that Thomas Brown has the passing game coordinator title is a very significant bit of news that we should not overlook, because that tells me Thomas Brown is going to have a significant level of say within the offensive framework. And if he's going to have a significant level of say, that means this offense is going to adopt at least some of the Sean McVay offense. It's going to adopt at least some of that West Coast offense, which I go back to what we talked about last week. Ashton Grant, the quarterback's coach, coming from Cleveland, West Coast offense. You've got Stefanski. Grant worked for a year underneath Alex Van Pelt. Alex Van Pelt obviously worked with Drake May. Drake May is very comfortable with some of that verbiage and some of that West Coast play and scheme. So it makes a lot of sense to bring McDaniels in. McDaniels will bring some of his offensive flavor into this. McDaniels went around the country and learned from different systems, Ohio State, USC, talked to some other coaches. I think what you're going to see is a different kind of offense. You're going to see that blend, and that should be exciting. This is exactly what I asked for 2-3 weeks ago when we talked about Josh McDaniels. I said the one thing, the biggest question to me, is McDaniels willing to evolve his offense, to modernize his offense, to simplify certain things? Is he open to new ideas? And this staff that they're putting together tells you that they're open to ideas. Greg Bedard has said that Josh McDaniels has a friendship with McVay. He's got a friendship with Ben Johnson. Certainly seems like he's looking around saying, all right, I want to plug this into my system. I want to plug that into the system. And I'm going to create an offense that works to Drake May's strengths. So I'm excited by it. The pass game coordinator title is also big when you think about the Patriots from the 30,000-foot view. What do I mean by that? The Patriots are evolving. We talk about McDaniels wanting to evolve his offense. The Patriots are evolving as a franchise. The Patriots have never used the pass game coordinator title. So why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because that means you're willing to build a bigger staff. And when you're willing to put pass game coordinator on top of the tight ends coach, for example, that allows you to go get some of the better younger talent throughout the game. Because now you can offer somebody who might just be a tight ends coach, you can offer them the pass game coordinator gig. So it's a great avenue to pluck some of the best talent, to give them promotions and to get them on your staff. And it also tells us that the Patriots are willing and able to add to this staff, bring a guy in like Thomas Brown and give him that title so they can continue to build this bigger and bigger and bigger and better. So the Pats are evolving with the times. Vrabel is starting to evolve the program. No, we're going to put pass game coordinator on his title because that's going to help us. We want the bigger, better staff. A lot of people were saying Mike Vrabel should hire the tight pants guys instead of Josh McDaniels, right? Well, Vrabel actually said, I'm going to hire McDaniels and I'm going to hire some tight pants guys. What if I give you both, right? You look at Grant, you look at Larkin, you look at Brown. They're all under 40. Larkin and Grant are 28 years old or so. Thomas Brown is only 38 years old. Those guys have worked under the tight pants offensive coordinator crew, the tight pants head coach crew. So Mike Vrabel said, I'm not just going to bring Josh McDaniels. I'm going to bring McDaniels and I'm going to bring some tight pants. We might even get McDaniels to wear some tight pants this year. How about that? What if McDaniels just shocks the world and ends up being a tight pants guy? But Vrabel's looking at this and he's saying, why do I have to pick one or the other? How about I pick McDaniels, who is a very successful offensive coordinator, who has a long history of developing quarterbacks? Why don't I just hire him and then I hire other guys to work underneath him that will bring some of the tight pants vibe? Why don't I try to get best of both worlds? Why am I going to limit myself to one or the other? Patriots also use the offensive coordinator Rooney rule to their advantage, right? They brought in Thomas Brown for an interview, and they made the most of it. They got Brown in the building. They interviewed him. Mike Vrabel was impressed by Brown and said, that's a guy I want on my staff. That's a guy that we want on the staff. Let's bring him in. And again, McDaniels has some ties to McVay. He's got some ties to Ben Johnson. So I'm sure he has some knowledge of Thomas Brown. I don't know if he knows him directly. But you use the Rooney rule for the offensive coordinator position. You use that rule to take advantage of it and then get Thomas Brown as your tight ends coach, pass game coordinator. That's a great bit of business. A great bit of business. Here's one last thing before we move on to some other stuff. You have Mike Vrabel, you have Josh McDaniels, you have Doug Marrone, and you have Thomas Brown. Those are four guys on your staff that have been either an interim head coach or a head coach in the NFL. This is Vrabel's second stop. McDaniels had 2 stops. Marrone had 2 stops. And Thomas Brown was the interim head coach for Chicago for the finish of the season last year. You have 4 guys on your staff that are former head coaches, the current head coach, or an interim head coach. You want to talk about experience, right? You want to talk about guys who can lead rooms. McDaniels, he can't lead the 53. We've seen that. We understand that. He's not being asked to lead the 53. McDaniels can lead an offensive room. He's done it for a long time. Doug Marrone can lead an offensive line room. He's done it for a long time. Mike Vrabel can lead a room of 53. He proved that in Tennessee. Thomas Brown, on a lighter level, has proved that he can help run an offense and help run a football team as the assistant head coach under Sean McVay. You have guys in the room now that have been there and done that. What do you think those players are thinking, right? When they walk into that room, when they walk into that locker room and they see this coaching staff, what would you think? If you went from last year's staff to this year's staff, what would you be thinking when you walked in that room and you saw what you saw last year with a bunch of inexperience, bunch of guys that hadn't done their jobs before, and you compare that to what you would feel walking into the room as a player looking at this staff? Wow, Josh McDaniels, Super Bowls, Mike Vrabel, AFC Championship game, right? 12 wins with the Titans. Highly respected guy. Doug Marrone, no joke. Thomas Brown, no joke. This is like a different world, folks. This is a different universe. This coaching staff compared to last year's coaching staff, it's not even close. It's borderline comical to compare the two, frankly. So, yes, you should be excited. All right, got some other stuff I want to bring up because there are other additions to this coaching staff that I want to talk about. But I will remind you, like, comment, and subscribe. That's how you help the channel. You don't have to spend any money. You can click that thumbs up. Helps us drive the algorithm. Throw a comment in and subscribe. The goal is 6,000 subscribers by free agency. We got 6 weeks to get there. I believe that we can with your support. Also want to let you know, I don't talk about this often, but I'll throw this in here. I have a Patreon page. It's $5 a month, right? So what's that? Like $1.25 a week? $5 a month. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles, my name, Cattles. And if you like what we do with the Patriots, but you want some thoughts on some of the other Boston teams, that's what I do over there. You also get the ad-free pods, so you don't have to worry about the ads popping up when you watch on YouTube. You'll get the ad-free pods. You get ad-free audio pod as well. We got an exclusive podcast during the week, mailbag, Q&A, so a bunch of stuff there. Patreon, $5 a month. Check it out if you're interested. All right. Have a couple of other things I want to get to about this staff, but I got 2 more super chats in the inbox. Casey Reed, thank you for the 20. Thanks for being the anti-Felger. Well, Felger's got his way of presenting things. He's got his own opinions. He's got his own thoughts. He's been highly successful. So, shout out to him for being successful and doing what he's done in the business. I just tend to look at things a little bit differently and present things a little bit differently. And if you're a little fatigued with how certain people deliver their product, their content, I'm always open for business, Casey, but those guys have been very successful. They do what they do. I do what I do. So is what it is. But Casey, thank you for the $20 super chat and the kind words. Hamza, $2 super chat. Is Mike going to hire Wes Welker, wide receivers coach? I'll get to wide receiver coaches and some names I've got on my list in just a couple of minutes, Hamza. But I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the bucks you throw towards us. Means the world to me when people support the program. Okay, a few more things I want to do before we wrap up here. Don't want to keep you for too long. The Patriots also hired Florida A&M defensive coordinator and linebackers coach Milton Patterson. Milton Patterson actually spent 2023 with the Titans as an intern as part of that program. They also hired Illinois assistant defensive backs coach Kevin Richardson II. So they've got 2 guys, Milton Patterson, Kevin Richardson II, on this defensive staff. Both are young. Both are young up-and-comers, right? Understudies, so to speak. So you bring Patterson in, you bring Richardson II in. And this brings me to my next point about Mike Vrabel and how this coaching staff is being built. I believe that Vrabel is threading this needle near perfectly. He's bringing in experienced leaders, right? He's bringing in experienced guys like McDaniels and Marrone and Terrell Williams. He's bringing in the experience, but he also, at the same time, is bringing in these understudies, right? These young understudies. Offensively, you've got Larkin, you've got Grant. Defensively, you've got Patterson, you've got Richardson II. Offensive line, you've got Doug Marrone, you've got Hofteling, and maybe another name or two to be added to this staff. It's threading the needle. It's bringing in experienced guys like Doug Marrone, saying, Doug, you're going to handle the offensive line, but we're also going to have a couple of the younger guys underneath you to learn from you. And so now you have this terrific blend, this terrific mix of experienced leaders, coaches who have led rooms before with younger, up-and-coming understudies who are going to learn the tricks of the trade. And that's how you build a pipeline, right? If you want to build a pipeline of coaches and you want to do it the right way, this is how you do it. You have experience at the top and you have younger guys underneath who are learning from those experienced heads. And so if something happens and someone leaves, you have somebody to take over, right? Like right now, you've got Josh McDaniels, offensive coordinator. I don't think Josh is going anywhere, unfortunately for him, because he failed as a head coach so miserably. but you've got Josh McDaniels as the OC. You've got Thomas Brown, tight ends, passing game coordinator. Well, if Thomas Brown gets a job next year as an offensive coordinator, right? Well, now you have options underneath Thomas Brown as part of your offensive staff that you can promote. So if Ashton Grant does a great job as QB's coach, well, maybe Ashton Grant becomes QB's coach / passing game coordinator. This is what Bill Belichick used to do. The early days of Belichick, right? When he had Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel, he'd have younger guys underneath, and you would build that pipeline. Guys left. A lot of guys left. Belichick failed to replace some of those younger guys. He failed to supplement his coaching staff over time, which led you to Matt Patricia trying to be offensive line coach and offensive coordinator with Joe Judge. This is how you build it, though. You're inevitably going to lose people if you're successful, and Vrabel knows that. Vrabel went through that with Tennessee. He knows if you're a successful program, you win football games, guys will leave the staff. You have to be ready to replace those guys if/when they leave the staff. This is how you do it. You build this pipeline. You build this pipeline. You go out and you get somebody like Josh McDaniels. You give him a couple of young understudies. And you say, now we are prepared, right? If somebody leaves, we are prepared. Because the last thing we want to see is a top coach leave and nobody is ready to take over. Nobody's ready to help out. The pipeline. Something else I love about today. Doug Marrone, Thomas Brown, I don't think either of those guys have coached alongside Vrabel or McDaniels. So what does that mean? That means Vrabel, McDaniels, they're going outside their comfort zone. They're going out to get the best, right? Okay, Doug Marrone didn't coach with me, but I know Doug Marrone's damn good at what he does. We need offensive line help. Let's go get one of the most respected guys in the game to help us on the offensive line. Okay, Thomas Brown. We haven't coached with Thomas Brown. He hasn't been on one of our staffs before, but he coached under Sean McVay, assistant head coach, well-respected throughout the game, innovative, creative guy, right, on offense. We don't have to have work experience with him. Let's go out and let's get him because he's one of the better guys that are out there. And I love that. Don't be stuck, right? Don't be stuck in your bubble. Don't bring guys in that you just worked with. Bring some guys that you worked with, but go outside, extend yourself, and try to get some of the best. And that's what Vrabel and McDaniels are doing. They're bringing people in from outside of their own little circle. And I think that's the way you do it. Now, there are questions. Does everyone gel? Legitimate question. You have a lot of people working with each other for the first time. Are they going to be able to gel? Legitimate question, and we need to keep that on the table and not forget it, right? You also have, as Burt Breer said, lots of alpha personalities. You've got McDaniels, you've got Vrabel, two alphas. I'm sure that Doug Marrone is somewhat of an alpha. These guys have been very successful at certain points in their career. And with that, you're going to bring a little bit of, personality, a little bit of ego. They've got to be able to work the egos, and that's going to really be up to Mike Vrabel. Not only subjugating his own ego and allowing room and latitude for the coaches to say what they want when they want at certain times, but also it comes from the other guys subjugating their ego and understanding this is Mike Vrabel's program. So, yes, you have a lot of new together, and you've got a lot of guys who have had some success at what they do that could lead to problems. And you've got different schemes as well, right? Josh McDaniels drawing some of the Sean McVay people, bringing in Larkin from Ohio State, the Ryan Day, Chip Kelly offense. If McDaniels is going to blend his schemes here to make one scheme that makes the most sense for Drake May, there could be some learning curves here, right? Because there's so much new. But I would take all those questions. And I would embrace all those questions knowing that you've got this staff. I'd rather have this staff and those questions than don't have those questions, not have those questions and not have this staff. I think they're putting together a fantastic, fantastic coaching staff. I truly believe that. On paper, I don't think this team will fail due to underwhelming bad coaching. It might fail because of lack of talent, which we talked about a little bit earlier. They've got to bring talent in to work with these coaches and work for these coaches. Talent, talent, talent. But on paper, this coaching staff is one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL right now. Man to man. This is one of the better coaching staffs in the league. On paper. Can the personalities work? Will they get enough talent? Et cetera, et cetera. The questions exist. They should be asked, and we will look at all of those questions. But if you're asking me on paper, this staff is one of the better staffs in football. And if you're a Patriots fan, we don't know what's going to happen at free agency. We don't know what's going to happen at the draft. We have no idea what kinds of trades might happen. The only thing we can do right now, the only thing that Patriots fans can do, the only thing that I think that I can do right now is let you know what is happening right now in the moment on paper. We don't know what's going to happen down the road. And right now on paper, I'm telling you, this is a really good coaching staff. And so for now, I'd be excited. We get to free agency and they swing and miss. They blow up the draft. They don't make a trade to bring in a significant talent. Then we look at things and go, okay, like very excited about the staff. And then things kind of went downhill once we hit free agency in the middle of March. But we can only judge what's happening right now. We don't know what we don't know. So right now, very happy with this staff. Very happy where the direction of this organization is headed with Mike Vrabel. All right, wide receiver names. Wide receiver coach names. Here are some guys. We've talked about some guys before, right? Brian Hartline, Ohio State wide receivers coach. Here's what I would say. I think it's unlikely Brian Hartline will be here in New England. If Vrabel somehow, some way got Hartline here to New England, it would be a gigantic coup. I don't think that's going to happen. One of the reasons why is because of Thomas Brown. Again, Thomas Brown's passing game coordinator means something. That title means something. And if you're going to try to pull somebody like Brian Hartline away from Ohio State, you want to bring him in. One of the things that you kind of dangle in front of Hartline is, oh, you can be also the pass game coordinator, right? You can be the wide receiver / pass game coordinator. That would be something that you could kind of put on the table for Hartline to make it a little bit more enticing. Also don't know if Hartline wants to leave. He's an Ohio State guy. He might be waiting for Ryan Day to hang it up. Maybe Ryan Day is closer to hanging it up after winning a national title last week. So I think Hartline is very unlikely. Mick Lombardi is a name. I've brought him up a little bit. Former wide receivers coach of the Patriots. Many people respect what he has done in football. Greg Bedard is a fan of Mick Lombardi, thinks he's a very good wide receivers coach. The interesting thing about Lombardi is that he has close ties to McDaniels, but he is also working in L.A. Under, is it L.A. or I should have wrote this down. It's either L.A. or it's San Francisco. It's San Francisco, now that I think of it. Mick Lombardi, I believe, is out in San Francisco. Yes, he is. I'm talking so much about these guys from different teams. Yes, Mick Lombardi. I knew it was San Francisco or L.A. So Lombardi is out there with the 49ers working under Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's offense, Sean McVay's offense, Kevin Stefanski's offense. So it would make a lot of sense if you had Lombardi, who worked under McDaniels with the other offense that he ran, right? The prior offenses that he ran here in New England. But you also have him who's working with Kyle Shanahan, who could be a part of the whole Thomas Brown, Ashton Grant circle of thought, where he can also bring in that West Coast vibe. So it makes a lot of sense. Mick Lombardi is somebody I'd look at. Wes Welker makes sense. We've talked about Wes Welker a little bit, but Wes Welker, of course, he was terrific in McDaniel's offense back in the day. He has worked for Shanahan. He worked for Mike McDaniel. So again, you have somebody who has a deep history in not only McDaniel's offense, but also what they do with Shanahan, McVay, and that West Coast vibe, along with Mike McDaniel down in Miami, who, of course, worked with Shanahan. So Wes Welker would have familiarity with both of those offensive backgrounds. And if you're trying to blend those two offenses, Wes Welker would make a lot of sense. Chad O'Shea is another name that I would bring up. Chad O'Shea was wide receivers coach for a long time here in New England, like 9 or 10 years. He's currently in Cleveland. And he's somebody also with that background of both offenses, right? The McDaniels offense, he's been working with Stefanski in Cleveland now for the last couple of years. He was Brian Flores' offensive coordinator down in Miami. So he also has different experiences, and he has a background in both of those offenses. So if you're going to work with those offenses, it makes sense to have somebody as wide receivers coach who's worked within both of those offenses. So those are some names. Brian Hartline, Wes Welker, Mick Lombardi, Chad O'Shea. If one of those guys is the hire, I'd be very, very happy. I would be ecstatic. And I would just say, again, it's a great hire if that's what happens. Anonymous, $10 super chat. Thank you. Here are some bad vibes for the Chiefs. Boo. Yeah, man. I'm tired of the Chiefs. I'll talk about the Chiefs on Thursday night. I do an NFL podcast on Thursday night. I drink a beer, talk football, crafts and kickoffs. We'll do some Chiefs stuff and NFL stuff, especially Jerry Jones and what's going on in Dallas. We'll do that on Thursday night. But Anonymous, thank you. I appreciate the 10. Very much so. Like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. Help a brother out. That's how you can do it. Trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by free agency. So we got about a month and a half to get to 6,000. I appreciate every single one of you for supporting this program, investing your time in this program, subscribing to this podcast, to this channel. Absolutely appreciate the super chats as well. We'll keep on cranking. If something big breaks, we'll be all over it with the Breaking News podcast. Until then, we will be back on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. Check us out. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your fellow Patriots fans. Till then, Nick Cattle Show. I'll see you later.